Hey, I don't know about you, but I can feel so scattered sometimes between the pinball machine of thoughts bouncing around my mind, not to mention all the notifications, my very loud children, and the ongoing demands coming at me all day, every day. The days can feel overwhelming. That's exactly why I created my brand new Start Your Day Planner. This planner helps you start each day clear, confident, and in control. This simple 5-minute morning routine gives you easy prompts that give context, clarity, and focus to your day so you know exactly what to focus on and you finally feel good about how you spend your time. And I'm so excited to let you know that the physical hard copy of the Start Your Day Planner is now available. You can head over to startyourdayplanner.com to get your copy. And if you want to check it out before you buy it, you can even download a free digital sample of the Start Your Day Planner. You can see the inside. Go ahead, get started on the system and try it out for yourself. Head over to startyourdayplanner.com and get ready to start your days in a whole new way. That's startyourdayplanner.com. Hey everyone, and welcome to Get Your Hopes Up. I'm Christy Wright, and I'm so glad you're here. Romans 15:13 says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by power of the Holy Spirit." Our God is the God of hope, and he wants you to overflow with hope. So let's start our week by getting our hopes up again. Now, today is part 2 with my pastor, Darren Whitehead, and we are continuing the conversation around fasting. If you missed last week, you want to go back and listen to that episode because we talk all about biblical fasting. Why does it matter? How does it work? What can we expect? And how do we decide what foods to fast from and how long to fast? We talk about all that in that episode, so you don't want to miss that. But today we're switching gears just a little bit. We are talking about how to fast from our devices, a digital fast. Darren has a devotional called The Digital Fast, 40 Days to Detox Your Mind and Reclaim What Matters Most. This is a book that my family and I have gone through, and it's something that has helped thousands of families reclaim their lives and have a better relationship with their devices. We're going to talk about how to do that, and I know you'll love this conversation. Let's dive in. Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. Now, we've been talking about fasting from food. We've been talking about juices and Daniel fasts and all of that. But you also have been in the last few years teaching a very different message on fasting that's connected to it. And it's around digital fasting. Now, I want to start with just going back to the original digital fast before your book, before all of this. When you led our church on a digital fast, can you take me back there? Tell me what year it was and tell me what started this whole idea, because it's a little weird, Darren, for a pastor to be talking about social media and technology. So take me back and help me understand the beginning.
It is, yeah. So, and it's funny because it is a little weird. And early on, I felt very insecure about talking about it because I have not heard any other pastors talk about it. I've not heard any other pastors try to lead their church through a digital fast. And I thought that people might be saying, just teach the Bible, dude, and stay in your lane, you know? And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine over lunch, and he was talking about the impact of screens on his children and how that they were starting to do some family therapy. And that this therapist said, I won't meet with your family until your family has done 30 days without screens.
Wow.
And that was the pathway of entry to be able to start therapy with this therapist. And I thought, how interesting. And he was about 2 or 3 weeks into it. I said, how's it going? He's like, you know what? Amazing. And a lot of the problems we were dealing with our children, we're not even dealing with anymore because we don't have screens in our life. And so that started percolating a little bit. And then, we lead a 21 days of prayer and fasting every year. And people were saying, well, I'm going to fast from my phone. And I thought, I think that's a really cool thing to do, but it's a different thing to do.
Right.
Biblical fasting is fasting from food. And I don't want people to be robbed of the spiritual blessing of actual biblical fasting. I don't want to dilute it. I don't want to make it say something it's not. And so I think it's important, but it's different. So one year, I guess this is 3 years ago, we're heading into January, and I said to everyone, we're doing our 21 days of prayer and fasting, and this is how we're going to do it, and we're inviting you to do it. And some of you are interested in fasting from your phone or from social media, and I think that that's a great thing to do. But I want you to know we're all going to do that together later in the year. We're actually going to have a season where we all do it together. And when I was saying that in January, I actually didn't even know what I was talking about.
I was gonna say, you were just making it up, right? You're like, yeah, it sounds good. Let's just.
Yeah.
I say things out loud sometimes to hold myself accountable, Darren. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do in July? Here's what I'm going to do. And then I better do it because
Exactly. And so I'm like, we're going to do a digital detox. We're going to do a fast. And I had no clue. I just then had to read a bunch of books and I had to study a bunch of things and find out like what even is it. And what's so interesting, Christy, is for really different reasons, but similar reasons, a digital fast was so powerful for people because these devices have seeped their way into our lives and they have taken over all of our headspace and our discretionary thought time and it left us with our minds feeling fragmented and cluttered and distracted and filled with visual candy where we can't think clearly anymore. The most powerful thing that I didn't realize when I was initiating this is that if you ask someone, have you ever done a digital detox? They almost all say the same thing. No, but I need to. Like everyone intrinsically feels this thing is taken over my life a little bit and I don't feel great about my digital consumption. But you see, when you do it as a community, it's easier to do.
Yeah.
Social scientists call this a collective action problem. A collective action problem is where we all know that something is harming us as a society, but we don't want to step back from it because we don't want to penalize just ourselves, right? So you ask a teenager if TikTok is making you sad, then why don't you just get off TikTok? They say, I can't. All my friends are on TikTok. And so it's the fear of missing out, you know. It's I will shut off access to that social part of my life.
Right.
So we all keep doing things that are harmful to ourselves because none of us want to get left out. That's a collective action problem. Well, the way to address a collective action problem is with collective action. Like as a community, you go, all right, our entire friend group is getting off social media for the next month. Okay. Then we can hold one another accountable. I'm not going to be the only one left out. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, I can talk about my discomfort with my friends. We're all going to do this. We're going to go on this journey together. And it turns out that a church is the most ideal space to be engaging in something that is relatively new in terms of a phenomena. But the church, a faith community, is just poised for this. And like fasting, it's not just putting something down, it's picking something else up, right? You're not just, it's not just to abstain, it is also to engage. And so we're asking people to, instead of doom scrolling cat videos for an hour a day, that you would intentionally be not doing that, but you would actually be picking up God's word. And you would be saying, God, would you fill my mind and my heart with the promises of God? Would you stir my faith? Would you turn down the noise of the world and turn up the voice of God? And we're encouraging people to do that for 28 days.
You know, it's so interesting. So we did the digital fast a few years ago, like you said. And so it's been so powerful it's almost like a wake up call of the hold it has on you. Well, I read The Anxious Generation last summer. And it changed my parenting. Not just devices were never a huge problem. I feel like because our kids are still pretty little, we don't have teenagers with phones and all that you're talking about. But the biggest thing that stood out to me was the freedom, giving them more freedom to try things to build their confidence. So that really changed how much freedom I give them and so on. Well, one of the things that was so compelling in his argument was how we are raising kids that are not living an embodied childhood.
Right.
And he talks about the body, the actual human body. When you are doom scrolling, your mind is somewhere else. And it actually is training your mind to always be somewhere else. And I'm amazed at how much I would go through my days, Darren, and my mind is not in my body. Wherever my body was, whether it's in the kitchen cooking or in the car getting my kids or watching my kids play, my mind was not there. My mind was always, always somewhere else, either from the screen's input or from my own distraction and running thoughts. And I thought, bringing your mind back home to your body, the simplest concept, right? To like sense what is happening. Like even everyone listening right now, like, what do you feel? What kind of chair are you sitting in? Are you standing? What are the textures around you? What are the lights? What are the sounds? We miss all that.
Yeah, we've lost the art of being present.
1,000%. And you don't realize how, oh my gosh, I'm going through my whole life, my days, my weeks, my world, and I'm not experiencing any of it. I'm not actually experiencing it because my mind is somewhere else. And phones are such a big part of that. And so I just think it is this wake up call. And I feel like that having a fast is really the only way to fix it. Because if you just say, I'm going to cut back, I'm going to look at it a little less, it's almost like the addiction that we have and the grooves in our brain that are so deep is going to be a stronger pull. It has to be this kind of cold turkey. At least I've experienced that. Is that what you've seen? Like the fast is kind of that catalyst to have a different relationship with your devices.
Yeah, because we have to reboot our nervous system. So we actually have to change our perspective. So a lot of people are then wondering, like, well, what is a digital fast, right? I'm not suggesting that you take a hammer and smash up your smartphone. 93% of Americans own a smartphone now, right? So they're just everywhere. They're ubiquitous. And smartphones are the ways that we board airplanes, and it's the way that we get into our cars now and unlock our homes and operate appliances and everything, right? So what I learned when we did it the first time, and and you've been around for all of it, so I'm learning all this in real time. I'm realizing like it's not practical to say throw your smartphone away for a month, right? So the more sophisticated way to be looking at this is to think about the apps on your phone through the lens of distraction versus utility. Not all apps are created equal. We have these apps that, like social media and news apps and video apps and shopping apps, even email. These are the wormholes of time that we get trapped in, and they just absolutely absorb all of our attention, right? That's not true of everything. When you board American Airlines with the American Airlines app, you don't then get on the plane and doom scroll on it for 45 minutes, right? There's nothing cool to look at.
Right.
You don't play with your calculator for 3 hours. You know?
Right.
It's like, so the call is to turn your smartphone back into a utility device. Or the way that I like to say it is make your smartphone dumb, right? And then what will happen is you remove all of the distraction apps off of it, and it's different for everyone, but the categories are generally the same. But you make it a utility device. Anything that takes your time, distracts you, get it off your phone for 28 days. And then what you're going to do is you're going to end up grabbing your phone and opening it, and you do that without even thinking, because we do it, over and over again throughout the day. You're going to look at your phone and realize there's nothing cool to look at and put it down again. And that's what we want, right? We want to retrain yourself. You turn it into a utility device, and not saying forever. We're just saying like reboot your nervous system. So the digital fast is 4 7-day movements. The first 7 days is to detach. So you remove all the distraction apps off of your phone. You detach yourself from the constant connection to all of this digital junk food, right? And you'll probably feel some discomfort. Like any sort of withdrawal. Social media withdrawal is an actual term now that sociologists have.
Wow.
And doing it as a friend group is a much, much easier way, as I mentioned earlier. First 7 days is to detach. The second 7 days is to discover. The next 7 days, you start to realize all the things that you haven't been noticing. And sometimes it's in other people, the people we live with, our children. Sometimes it's in yourself. You discover all kinds of feelings that you've been covering up with your smartphone. When we feel sad, when we feel shame, when we feel anxious or afraid, that is an uncomfortable feeling. And so many of us, without even thinking, will grab our phones and look at some visual candy that will soothe that anxiety or that uncomfortable feeling. So what we do is we just cover it up all the time. So instead of these feelings naturally working their way, processing them through our minds and our bodies, we have all of this unprocessed feelings, all of this emotion that we haven't dealt with. By the way, there are some that believe that the rise of the panic attack, which you hear so many more people speaking about these days, is in part function to the fact that people are covering over all of these feelings, and like a beach ball that you're trying to hold under the surface, at some point that thing's coming out and it manifests itself in extreme panic.
This episode is brought to you by Glorify, the #1 Christian daily devotional app. Hey, do you want to grow in your relationship with God, but you don't know how? Or maybe you find yourself opening your Bible with no idea of where to start. I get it, and I've been there. Luckily, that's where the Glorify app comes in. With Glorify, you can start your morning by reading the Bible passage of the day, diving into the daily devotional, or even wrapping up with an immersive experience called Daily Walk with God. And if you need to take a few minutes to yourself in the middle of a busy day, you can try one of the guided meditations or listen to their worship playlists for some quiet reflection. To end the day, you can even enjoy sleep meditations to help you wind down. Join over 20 million people who have downloaded the Glorify app and deepened their relationship with God. Visit glorify-app.com/hope right now to download the Glorify app for free. That's glorify-app.com/hope. I'll be having a wonderful, beautiful day. It's sunshiny. My kids are playing and laughing, and I open up my phone, and there's some tragedy in another part of the world, and all of a sudden I feel guilt, and it's like I'm scared and I'm fearful. It's the input as well of, I know John Eldredge has talked about this, of we were not made to know about all of the problems of the world at all times. And so I think you're exactly right. It's one of the most fascinating things to me that I noticed when I've done this is how much more rested I feel after the initial detox, after the initial withdrawal, how much more rested I feel because my brain is not just having this constant source of input, and how much I notice. I just notice things. I love to make things practical. So I want to share with our listeners, here's some rules that we use in our house just to make it like down to earth after the digital fast. So we did the digital fast. I don't know what year it was. It was 2 years ago. I'm going to show you your book. Okay, Darren, you can't get mad at me. Okay.
Okay.
Look at the front of your book. Y'all can't see it. My daughter drew all over the front. We've got Sharpie. So
Love
we've
it.
got Sharpie art from Mary Grace Wright.
Sharpies are an analog experience. I love that.
On the digital fast. So aside from that, what we did as a family when we did this, and just to show people in real life how I applied it, that I think worked really well. I'm not an expert, but this is what worked really well for us. We came home from our church conversation on this, and we had the book and all of that. And I sat down with my kids, and I started with an apology. I started with the confession. I said, we have like family meeting, quote unquote family meeting, where we all get together. We know mom's going to talk about something usually, and it's sometimes good, sometimes hard, But I said, hey, I just want to apologize to you because I said, I am addicted to my phone. And I held my phone up. I said, I'm addicted to my phone. And I have showed you that this phone is more important than you. And it's not. And I said, and I'm really sorry for that. I said, this phone is nothing to me. But when you tell me a story or you want my attention or you have a question and I'm staring at my phone, what I'm really telling you is that this is more important than you than it's not. And I said, these phones and we call them iPads, but they've got a Kindle Fire. It's like a kid's tablet. I said, these things are designed to make you addicted. And they're designed to keep your attention all day, every day. So when you feel like you can't put your Kindle Fire down, your iPad down, it's not your fault, buddy. It's actually designed to get you the next level. And so we just had this whole family meeting. Now, my kids, just for anyone listening, are 10, 8, and 5. So they're old enough to understand basic, communication like this. I don't have a baby. But what we did was we said, as a family, we're going to do this digital fast, and here's what it's going to look like. And we kind of set the guardrails around it. Well, we set these guardrails in place that we have carried throughout. So the guardrails are this: we do not do screens, TV screens, any type of screens, Monday through Friday, or Monday. I guess it's Monday through Thursday. We don't do screens during the week. So when they come home from school, they know, don't ask to turn the TV on. We don't. We don't do iPads or Kindle Fire really, unless we are on a road trip. So they only get their Kindle Fire on a road trip. They want to take road trips a lot. They're like, where can we go
It's
next?
a road trip, yeah.
That's right. So they get the Kindle Fire in the car, which is great for us because it's a quiet car ride and it's a real treat for them. And then they get TV on the weekends, and that might be a show or a football game. Okay. We went through a detox period of complete insanity for 3 to 4 days. And after that, it's been the best we've ever experienced in our life. And we've never gone back. Those are still our rules today, that we don't do TVs during the week and so on. So the fast helped be the jump start, but I just want to share that personal example with people to know how we applied it in our real life. I think a couple things that worked were, number one, we started with an apology and ownership and vulnerability and confession that this is us and it's our fault. Two, that it's not their fault. These devices are actually designed to addict them and their little brains. And then three, we set some real clear rules of like always and nevers. And so they don't even ask to watch TV on a Wednesday night because they know we don't watch TV during the week. So I think this book, The Digital Fast, which for anyone that is interested, it's 40 days to detox your mind and reclaim what matters most. Darren walks you through this series, and I want you to keep walking through it. But you can get it wherever books are sold, and this will give you the plan basically to do this digital fast in your household. And I just challenge everybody to get your whole family on board because it really helped us to explain and get everybody involved. Okay, so walk us through. So so you're detaching.
The second is to discover, and you discover all these things. You also discover the voice of God, which is, think about the impact of the way that we pull up at the stoplights and we grab our phones and start scrolling. Instead of like, Lord, what do you want me to pay attention to right now? What do you want to speak to me about? What are the themes that you want me to notice in the way that I pray? The people that we should be praying for, that God wants to bring to our mind or our attention. We're not doing any of that because we're looking at junk, So that's the second movement, is to discover. The next movement is to delight. And I got the opportunity to spend some time talking to Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation. And I was explaining this whole thing to him. And he said, do you want to know what the brain science is for why it feels delightful? He said, what happens is that social media and smartphones have caused such an overdose of dopamine in our brains that our dopamine receptors are not doing what they're supposed to do anymore. And what you have to do is you have to take a couple of weeks, and then your dopamine receptors reset after a couple of weeks. And then what that means is, like, dopamine brings pleasure, it brings joy, it soothes and brings peace instead of anxiety. So what happens is a couple of weeks into stepping back from this overdose of dopamine, your dopamine receptors go back to what they're supposed to do, and you actually start to experience joy again. There's like an actual brain science that shows why you actually enjoy it. The final movement is to determine, what do I want? And your family did this. Like, what do I want my digital habits to be long term? A lot of people, it's not that they get off social media for the rest of their life, but a lot of people don't put it back on their phone. So this is about frequency. If you go on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media platform once a day and check out what's going on, it is infinitely less harmful than 68 times a day. And so when these devices have become like appendages on our bodies, and then we overdose ourselves with exposure, that's where it becomes problematic. And the thing about social media, it's so funny. When social media first began, we knew it as a network. Everyone called it a social network. And the idea was that you could connect with other people, Facebook, and you can connect. Well, somewhere along the line, we stopped calling it a network and we called it a platform. It's a social media platform. What's a platform? Platform is where someone is on a stage and they're projecting their life to an audience. And so we now compare the highlight reels of people's curated lives with the mundane and the anxieties of our own lives. And then we feel just this sadness of comparison. And comparison is just robbing us of joy. So the call in the digital fast is to Marie Kondo our digital life, right?
Yeah.
Marie Kondo is famous for helping us clean out our closets by pulling up a piece of clothing and asking, does this spark joy?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, you throw it out. And if it does, you keep it. So then I want people to Marie Kondo their digital world and ask themselves, does putting Instagram back on my phone spark joy? Does putting TikTok back on my phone spark joy? And lots of people are saying, no, I had a better life without it. So I'm not saying I'm never going on Instagram again, but I am saying it's better not on my phone. So I'm going to use it on an iPad, or I'm going to use it on a desktop computer. And that is going to be the way that I'm able to regulate my consumption of these platforms.
Yeah, I love that. It's also, I have a lot of listeners, Darren, that are business owners, small business owners, their brands, their influencers, speakers, a lot of similar pull towards social media for the reason of impact and building their brand, or they
Yeah.
feel called. Like I really want to be a positive voice in the Instagram space. But here is what is really key that I've had to learn over the last few years. And this is specific to me. It might not be prescriptive for every single business, but I have decided that I'm going to go on Instagram and post when I want to. Because if you don't make the decision to post just when you want to, and now if it's a part of your overall strategy, you got a team, maybe that's different. But people that are feeling like they have to show up every day because the algorithm says so, because Instagram says so, because reels are trending, because this type of video is trending, then what's happening is it's pulling these business owners that are also moms, by the way, that want to have a life and just enjoy their child on the trampoline versus feeling like they have to capture it, share it, and put an affiliate link on it.
Right.
It's like you can just decide not to. You can just decide, I'm not going to get pulled into that current. I'm still going to like I posted once in December, once in January, and then I posted a reel yesterday because I was up early and the Lord put a message on my heart. And I thought a lot of times I'll be like, ooh, this is a message for my audience. I feel like I need to share it. And I shared it in a sweatshirt with greasy hair. And I don't know when I'll be back, whenever I want to. But I'm not going to get in this rat wheel of an algorithm chasing. And I just think that's
really good.
important for business
And
owners.
those who make their living from social media, they generally ask me, well, what do I do with this? And I'm like, well, there's a difference between contributing and consuming, right? So if you make your living from Instagram, and we have lots of people in our church who make a good living from YouTube, so you're creating content, contributing it, but you're not consuming content. I would still encourage people to not consume content for the digital fast. Doesn't mean they can't create.
Right.
So there's a difference.
Well, and also I think with anything, like we're saying, like we set family rules that we don't watch TVs during these days or hours. You just set rules around it with work hours. If this is your work and your source of income, then it should have work hours.
Yes.
And it happens during work hours. And when you're off work, you're off. You're not checking how many likes, how many comments, do I need to respond to a DM? That can happen during work hours when you're working. And it'll just help segment, I think, compartmentalize. Yes, this is a part of my life. It is a work function, back to your words of like utility device. And it happens during work hours. Let me tell you something. I'm not feeling real drawn to work on my taxes on a Saturday, Darren. I'm not like, ooh, I can't wait to sit down and work with my CPA. No, we're going to keep that compartmentalized to what I have to work on during work hours. And I just think that helps us keep that boundary in place. Okay, so I'm curious as we wrap up about the digital fast, what happened? Like you led this first digital fast and you have been so just a leading this charge really in the church world, which is so courageous, by the way, for you to do this thing that maybe up front you had, I don't know, is this weird? What are people going to say? Now you have a devotional on it, which we're talking about. You've done tons of podcasts on it. This is a regular rhythm of our church practice. What have you seen the results of this in the church and in the larger church as well, not just our own church?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was super nervous about doing it the first time. As we kind of got to the end of it, I had so many other pastors reaching out and asking about it. And how did you do it? And what did you learn? And all of that kind of stuff. And so the reason I wrote the book is because so many people were saying, we want to do this. And so I wanted to basically record all the learning on, and after a season of a couple of years, I'd actually like learned a lot about this and talked to a lot of people and got a lot of best practices. So year 2, so we're about to do year 3 as a church. Year 2, I was so thrilled to see that, like I mentioned that I have 3 teenage daughters. My daughter's friends look forward to it now. Like they're like, Pastor Darren, we're excited about the digital fast coming. And one of the things that I've been so excited to see is that like these teenagers in our church have become digital Pharisees. Like if they see one of their friends on Instagram, they're like, no, put that away. You know, we're on a fast right now. Like they want it. They want guidance. They want direction. And you know, the thing is, Christy, we're in a moment where your kids are younger than my kids, right? You're thinking better about this than I did when my kids were your age.
Well, you didn't know.
We
I
didn't
mean, your
know.
whole generation. I'm so thankful I didn't have kids when you did. I would have done the same thing. Just handed them all phones. You didn't know.
So the average age that a kid gets a smartphone in America is 11. And what happens is when your kid's old enough to do a sleepover or do after school sports or whatever, you want to be able to get hold of them. You get an old iPhone from a junk drawer in your kitchen and you give it to them, you know? And we just didn't know. And smartphones evolved, right?
Sure.
They
Oh, big time.
started out so much less harmful. There was no social media, there was no app store, there was no front-facing camera, there were no notifications, there was none of that, right? And that has all seeped its way in since. And of course, we know that the mental health crisis that we're dealing with is heavily rooted in digital media consumption. And so the next generation of parenting are thinking so much better. And Jonathan Haidt has been really exceptional in providing clarity and basically saying the first phone that you give your kids shouldn't be a smartphone. It should be a flip phone, a dumb phone of some sort. And because the generation that had flip phones are fine in terms of
Right. That's right. My razor, my hot pink razor that played Shakira as my ringtone.
the razor was not destroying their attention span and their lives and their mental health.
Right.
So, you know, I am very, very hopeful. If you are a parent my age with teenagers, and the Jonathan Haidt's research says that the most harmful, most vulnerable age is a girl who is going through puberty. Girls going through puberty having social media is very, very precarious and very dangerous, according to the research now. Brains are completely rewiring themselves, and doing that with the gross superficiality of social media and comparison culture is very, very dangerous for girls. A lot of parents will say to me, well, it sort of feels like the ship has sailed. My kid's on social media and they have a smartphone. And what I would say to that is if a ship is leaving the dock and we know that it's going to sink, or we know that something harmful is going to happen to that ship, we want to turn that ship around, right?
That's right. That's good. That's so good.
And so my encouragement, if that is you, is do a digital fast as an entire family. Your teenagers, your parents, you all do it together, and then revisit the conversation at the end of the digital fast. And it might be that moving forward, after rebooting your nervous system, you actually have a way of looking at it a little differently, and you choose to engage in it a little differently.
That's so good. Well, I know one of the things that's just so fascinating when you say you're going to do a digital fast and these teenagers are excited and adults are excited and the congregation is excited. It just is so eye-opening at how much not only that they need it, like they say, no, but I need to, but that they want it. They just need someone to give them permission, someone to create a community around it, to make it cool, to make it supported. Wow. I mean, it just goes to show. So anyone listening right now, you can start this in your church. You can start this in your small group. The devotional is designed where you can do it as a group, and then you're not doing it alone. Do it even in your family, like we did, where you say, hey, we're all doing this together. It's the digital fast, 40 days to detox your mind and reclaim what matters most. I assume they can get it Amazon, wherever books are sold. What's the website?
Yes, we actually have a brand new workbook that's out now, and it's a 28-day version.
Okay.
And so it's 4 7-day movements, but this is a journal that has all kinds of different ways of engaging for all of 28 days. And our church is going to be doing this. So you'll see these because we're going to be handing them out in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Where can they get that?
That's all on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Well, Darren, this has been so helpful, from talking about fasting from food, which I know is really hard for people, but so important to break through in their relationship with the Lord. It could unlock so much for them they don't even know, to talking about the digital fast and how this really, it's a catalyst for a completely different relationship with your smartphone and with your devices. And it has been life-changing for our family. So I just want to say thank you for writing it. Thank you for being here. And thanks for teaching us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of Get Your Hopes Up. I love hanging out with you every Monday to help you get to know God, get closer to Him, and get your hopes up again. Be sure to share this episode on Instagram and Facebook so other people can get their hopes up as well. And be sure to pick up a copy of The Digital Fast by Darren Whitehead. Then I'll see you next Monday for another new episode of Get Your Hopes Up.